Welcome to the Potential Success Show. My name is Fong, and today we have another great guest. He comes highly recommended by a lot of individuals out there, also other guests that I had, for really because of his leadership skills. He's been able to help a lot of executives on high performance leadership. He's been able to scale Kincaid Group to becoming the third fastest growing company in Kansas City. He's also led the US's largest school bus fleet to success and also growth. He is an award-winning individual for being an outstanding person of character. He's been working with entrepreneurs and business leaders and business CEOs with actionable growth strategies, tailored solutions, protecting assets, and building teams, which also allows them to thrive and also unlocking their lasting value as well. He is the author of two books, Me and My Best Friend and Unbroken. So please welcome Certified Leadership Facilitator, CEO of RC Development Solutions, Mr. Ron Cox.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, always a pleasure. Thanks for being here. And I just want to ask, how does somebody like yourself become this great leadership individual who's able to help people grow and also like scale businesses and watch other companies grow and all that kind of stuff? I mean, like it's not an easy task. So where did you come from? How did you become this great leader?
Well, I appreciated that. Let's get dive right into it, I guess. You're going deep there, but I think that I've been blessed and with early leadership in my life when I was teenager and going into high school and just being surrounded with what I would call my tribe or my community. And I always found out that, if I surround myself with the right people, then they would hold me accountable. And holding each other accountable is probably one of the most important things I learned. And then I also learned that if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm probably in the wrong room because it's exhausting when you are constantly pulling people, pulling them up, pulling them up. I need people that will make me better, that will challenge me. I did a lot of coaching early on as well. And one of the things I learned through coaching is that you're going to learn far more from your failures than your successes. And if you ask me about certain games or matches, when we won our first national championship, I always tell people about the games that we lost and what we learned from that. And through learning, we didn't want to see that repeat performance. The same thing was in not-for-profit organizations that I worked with. The same thing was in enterprise and corporate America. And it really comes back to you learn, you pick up advice from those failures, and then you become better and you have a better game plan moving forward. But most importantly, you surround yourself with the right people.
I want to jump into your past with regards to dealing with school bus fleets. That's not
Yeah.
something I hear all the time. I'm just curious, what is something that people don't know about that world? That, oh, how hard can it be? You just, send school buses out. Is there something that's like interesting that people go, oh, I never thought about it that way?
Boy, it's timely. Today's a great day to have this conversation. If you've gone to the gas pumps and tried to buy diesel or unleaded, it's accelerated, 30, 40, 50% increase in price in the last 18 months. Well, dealing with a local public school district, they were experiencing the same issue. They'd had an annual budget approved and they based it on 3, 4, 5 year trend. So they did their due diligence and they went through and based it on facts, only to find out that they couldn't predict the future of fossil fuel. And so their budgets were off as much as 30, 40, and 50% just in that commodity. And it was devastating, the impact it had on the classroom, the teachers, the parents, the students. So we said, what can we do to create a more predictable environment so that your budgets remain strong and that you are able to keep those funds in the right place, which is the classroom? And so we started with that commodity and we analyzed fuel. And we went, and matter of fact, one of the greatest fossil fuel guys, clean energy guy, was T. Boone Pickens. And so we were bold enough to reach out, and I flew down to Dallas, Texas, and I met with T. Boone Pickens in his office. And I just said, hey, T. Boone, you made a living in the oil and gas industry. Now you're doing it in the natural gas, and you've been able to transition your organization and refocus and strategize to meet a need. I need help. And so we sit down and we came up with a program that said, let's convert that mechanical equipment over to a predictable, cheaper fuel. And so it was compressed natural gas. I went back to the school board and I said, if we do this, We can have a predictable future. We can lock in a long-term commodity contract with a known provider. And he was so excited to get involved and well respected and somewhat flattered that we asked for his help. And so he helped us look at the long-term costs of natural gas, lock it in for a known price. And then the school district authorized us to go to the market and we bid buses that operated on natural gas. And so it was the largest conversion at the time. I think by the time we got done working with that school district, they had nearly 150 units deployed, and they were saving literally millions of dollars over the course of the project just in the cost of fuel.
That is very, very impressive and very, very cool. I mean, it goes to show that when you take something that works somewhere else into your own area, it has this major effect that people don't even think about. And I'm sure lots of people at the time didn't even consider, hey, what can we do with this in the school board or in on school buses? So that's very, very impressive. Now, when it comes to working, because you worked with government, you've also worked with business CEOs and private and corporations. What's the biggest difference from your standpoint in the leadership style?
I will tell you that the mindset adopted in the not-for-profit world, because of the fixed known revenue source, the taxes, and the political ramifications of asking someone to increase it, including myself, there better be a plan in place and you better have trust built. And so, one of the things I would say is the mindset working in the not-for-profit world, and we had to change that, is the culture has to be saving money is making money. Where in corporate America, you have a new widget, a new product, you're solving a problem, you go to market. A lot of times, the companies I deal with, it involves technology advancements over labor allocation. So you're having technology take the place of what is very expensive and unknown, and that's the scale of labor. And so in the not-for-profit world, we flipped the mindset and said, okay, let's start looking at saving money, and then we could use that savings to generate new ideas, new programs, new curriculum. And so, through a series of town hall and public meetings, we were able to say, okay, let's go in and ask the people that are actually performing the task and say, what can we do different? And the mindset, it was hilarious. I remember I had an old timer in one of my meetings, and he said, you know what? There's advancements in everything around us. And he said, the simplest things in the world are, hey, believe it or not, we have indoor plumbing now. And so what an advancement, and also what an upgrade in service. And he said, let's look at that. And so what we did was, instead of having all the parents in this school district, in this church environment, all the parishioners, we said, let's bring in the people performing the tasks. And so we did, and we said, what can we do different? Well, this outdated equipment is insufficient. It's costing me twice as much time to do this. And a lot of times, before the event, I'm on overtime. So we looked at labor allocation. How can we reduce labor allocation and put that monies back into the classroom? And we were able to do that. And with that, they actually were able to hire additional staff, whether it's teachers, custodians, lunch ladies, and reappropriate those funds and overall deliver a better level of service to their students and to the parishioners into the church.
Very cool as well. When it comes to coming up with these ideas and different actionable steps, I'm sure that in any environment and in any group, you can't get everybody to buy in. Like there's always that one person that goes, well, that's not how we did things here. And I'm sure it's also more difficult when it comes to the public space as well. How do you navigate through that? Is it something that you do differently when it comes to the private and then versus corporate and also public? Or is it dictatorship? Kind of, hey, no, you just follow me in or else you're out of here. Like, how do you get
Yeah.
everybody to buy in?
That's a great question. I'll give you an example. We had to deal with this in an organization. One of the organizations I went in to work with, and I looked at the previous financials, which were somewhat incomplete, but it told the story nonetheless. They had lost $2.56 million. And obviously, that's a real concern operating in the red. And that would be the same if you were a local government, state, church, youth organizations that I'd worked with. And so we said, what's the issue? Well, as I started diving back down into it, I had that. I had a separation of personalities. I had people with lack of trust. I had some people that were less than humble. And so they didn't have basically the servant's mentality, which I thought was, hey, we're here to help. So we started just looking at the culture from the outside in. And we said, how can we improve this culture? Well, it's going to start with the people. So I actually made everyone who had a role in an organization take a personality test, and it's called a CBI. And there's thousands of them out there, and so I wouldn't necessarily endorse one, but I would endorse the process of saying, let's see what happens, because in that environment, let's just say we have a stimulus, whatever that is. So there's going to be some sort of what's going to cause an issue. Maybe it's a customer, client, product defect, whatever. And then whatever that stimulus is, what's the response? So you have stimuli and you have a response. And you're going to find out how people are hardwired. And based on that challenge or what happens that day, how are they going to respond? Because that's how they're wired. I literally went up to this organization and I put a bus of all things on a whiteboard, and I put 13 seats, six down one row, six down the other row, and then a driver. We grabbed the founder of the company. We put him in the seat and we gave him a title. We said, "You're the founder. With all due respect, you started the foundation. Great. It's up to everyone else to continue your legacy." So after we got the culture value index back, we came back and we said, okay, we ended up with 8 people in the wrong seat on the bus.
Mhm.
And the nice thing about that personality index is you can also apply it to a job description. So you could use it to say, based on how they're hardwired, they're going to be great at this. I'm going to overly exaggerate this, but let's say some people are people, persons, face to face. Perhaps it's business development, sales. And then you have people that say, I don't want to talk in front of people, but I'm very good at math, science, numbers. I love welding. I love creating. I'm very artistic. Great. Well, let's put you in the right seat. And we did that. And as soon as we did that, we said, okay, now that we have that established, we think we've set you up for success. Let's agree to put together a program, and we all are going to raise our hand and say yes on what matters most. So we identified what things we thought were measurable, predictable, and most importantly, that they're responsible for. And so as the days go on over 3 days, I found myself in the shadows in the back of the room, allowing them to set those goals, establish those targets based on their experiences. So we turned that company and we did measurables at 36 months, 60 months, and then they did a 10-year forecast. By the time we hit the middle at the 5-year mark, we were doing $1 million a day in business. And so we went from losing 2.56 million in a previous year to doing $1 million a day. And then at the end of 5 years, they decided it's time to go to market, and they went to market and they sold it for $280 million. Just
Wow.
two of the departments in the organization for 280, roughly 280 million.
Wow, that's very, very impressive. Now, do you find that when you go in and do these exercises and all these personality tests and whatnot, that people are generally, yeah, sure, we'll do it? Or is there anybody who's like, oh, this is stupid. I don't want to do it. Like, you want me to pretend to drive a bus? No, I'm not doing that. Like, and then if there are, how much slack do you give that and effort until you go, you know what? Fine, you just go.
Yep. That's a great question again. I would say, based on my experiences, yes, you will have that. In that specific example, I said there were 8 people on this bus. Of the 12 that were in a seat, 8 of them were in a different seat. And when I say different seat, I'm trying to be respectful in the fact that of the 8, 5 of them were the only one that stayed. 3 of them were new names
Oh, well.
because they couldn't change the culture to where it had been. And where it had been was the reason for failure. And so they found themselves transitioning outside the organization voluntarily. And so a lot of time you'll have people who understand that if I'm not a good fit, they see the writing on the wall, if you will, and say, this culture is different. I can't fit in. My new role is not what I thought it was going to be. And so they've transitioned out. And then the people that are on the bus or still left in the organization, working collaboratively, we come up with that strategy and we say, okay, what matters most? And I will tell you, every time it came back to people. People, people, people. So we labeled people as internal, external. And then the internal people really cared about each other and they created this culture. that they knew that their reputation was now on the line because they created the deliverables and their name and they took personal responsibility. And what I saw, there's probably five things that I would say that helped maintain and retain the right people is they knew that we had a greater emotional intelligence. So people understood how people were wired. We shared that information. They knew how to communicate better. We had higher, longer success rates. People that stayed on are still there today. I think you have a better health outcome because people are less stressed. Our absentee, our turnover, everything was better. Within the organization, one of the key metrics is that year they lost money is a contributing factor. They had a 39% retention ratio for full-time employees. 39%. So no wonder they were losing money. They were out constantly vacant positions. So when we did that, and we also found great candidates and leaders of those eight, they were internal. So people got promoted that deserved it. So I think we had this is kind of sensitive, but it's very important. We had a more diverse leadership team. That leadership team that when I showed up there was far different looking than it was when we got through this exercise and transition. The culture now had decision makers that were men, women, different age groups, different backgrounds, different race. And so all of a sudden, that whiteboard exercise looked a lot different when you had all these ideas from different perspectives. And we had better deliverable services. Our clients appreciated it. So at the end of the second year, they had a 93% employee retention year over year in FTEs, full-time equivalent staff,
Mm.
93. 5 years, they were almost at 98% retention. Clients recognized them, people saw them, people responded well, people took it personal, they felt better, they showed up every day. It was amazing.
That's pretty cool. Like, and I do like to mention the fact or highlight the fact that you said this is a little sensitive, and it is. Like lots of people go, okay, where's the line? Where yes, we want diversity. Yes, we want different cultures, different backgrounds, different age groups. But then there comes a point where are they qualified? Are they just getting that job because of that? How do you navigate through that and make sure that it's still fair, yet it's appropriate for diversity?
Oh, absolutely. For me, I think the standard was established when we decided that we were going to do personality testing on all new applicants. So we incorporated that through our HR training. And so we wanted to know how that applicant was going to respond to that stimulus. Like, if this occurs, how is he or she going to respond? And so we did that. And then I think another thing is we created expectations, job descriptions with the personality conflict or the core value index. So we said, if we're going to hire somebody to perform this task, we have a very higher chance of success because the position is ideal for this activity. And so through that, and then number two, we don't just let HR make all the decisions. People on the team got to vet. Here's the applicant. Here's how they respond to certain situations. Here's how well they work with others. What do you think? And so we would take it in and they knew that this person could impact their culture and their community, and they wanted to make sure that they had buy-in. And so we drove all the way to the front and said, this applicant must meet these standards.
Hmm. Very, very good. Now, speaking with you right now and also hearing the stories that you're telling, I would assume and imagine that you are very, very calm and you have a way of dealing with scenarios, conflicts, or frustrations in a very, very professional and very calm manner. How do you do that? Because lots of people go, oh, this sucks, and then they blow up. How do you deal with conflicts so that it's effective, yet you
Mhm.
still remain calm? Is there something you do on a daily basis that keeps your mindset in the right spot and seeing everything as a good opportunity? What do you do?
Actually, yes. One of the things I don't want to get too deep with you, but I open my day in prayer and I end my day in scripture.
Hmm.
And I started doing that because really there was three things, three obstacles, and like you mentioned earlier, you can read about it in my book Unbroken. That just really changed who I was. And all three of them involved dealing with terminal illness. And so I have been told that I'm not going to live three times in my life. 1987 was the first Rocky Mountain spotted fever, swollen brain. They didn't think I'd overcome. There was two people that were infected. The other person didn't make it. I did. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm still here. Why? What's my purpose? And then all of a sudden in 2007, I'm at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. I'm diagnosed with Wilson's disease. Best outcome, 36 months to live if I do the following. 2019, I'm diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And so I'm still here today. The thing is that that has changed my perspective on what matters most. And then I go back to the people who I surround myself with, and I really want to get leadership skills, transition from them, have them share them with me. My very first one was my grandfather, and I was raised by my grandparents. They rescued me from foster care. And so I had an abusive stepfather, and I was taken away from the house basically. My grandfather and grandmother had decided that, they were going to take on that responsibility. So here's a 12-year-old, and they started raising me. Well, I got into high school and I was playing some baseball, and I was sitting on the patio at my grandparents' house, and I was sitting there, and I've been there a couple hours. I was drinking an iced tea and struggling with a decision. And my grandfather came out and he said, "What's going on, Ron?" And he said, "I notice you're struggling, you're upset, you're depressed. What's bothering you?" And I said, I've been playing ball with all my friends. I love it. They're awesome." And I said, "But we played in a tournament and we had some good success against some really competitive teams. And our rec team did all right. And I got noticed by one of the coaches, and he was recruited me to go play. And he said, if you play on my competitive team, it'll give you a opportunity to go to college and have your college paid for." What a great opportunity, to come here and let all the college coaches see you in a showcase and do this and that. And my grandfather said, "So why won't you got great options? What's wrong?" And I said, "I'd rather participate and have fun. It's a sport. I just want to play with my friends, have fun. I'd love to be challenged and have the opportunity to go to college and have that paid for and not have a burden on myself or you and grandma." And so we had a long conversation. And he said, "Let me give you some advice. And when it comes to decision making." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I was a World War II guy." "Yep." "I enlisted." "Yep," because they were obviously going to be drafted and this, that, and the other. And he said, "I got put into a bunch of strangers into training. I got deployed. Next thing you know, I have a gun. And so I'm in a serious situation. I'm making literally life-saving decisions. And I went through training with these people, and I stood up and volunteered. I said, I'm willing to give everything in my life, up to and including my own life, for you, for my family, for my country, for whatever the cause was." And he said, "Grandson, when you have to decide who lives and who dies every minute of every day for an unlimited amount of days, you don't know what the end looks like. That's a hard decision." He said, basically, F and go have fun and play some baseball. For God's sakes, that's not a hard decision. And I think about that, and I go into these business decisions and I say, this isn't a life or death situation. God's put me in a position to make these decisions and help people. So how's that going to impact the employee, the staff, the client? Let's look at it like that. But stress is out of it because I'm thinking this is not a life or death situation. Thank you, grandfather, for teaching me early on what matters most. And then later in life, I had a boss. This is on the job training. And he was a retired lieutenant colonel, and he's an Air Force guy. Again, he came from a structured environment, a strong team. And he said, "This is your first management position, Ron." He goes, "You are a reflection of me. You work with me, for me, but most importantly, for this community." And he said, "If you go out and there's a situation along the road in the right of way, and let's just say you're dealing with a union employee or a crew that's fixing a water line or whatever it might be, they don't necessarily respect all management. They don't like the title. They don't like being told what to do. Sometimes they get aggressive, mostly not physical, but argumentatively. Keep your calm, keep your control. Because if I'm a citizen and I'm driving down the road and I see you engaged in a shouting match or a pushing match with an employee and this, that, and the other, that person driving that car is literally leaving that scene thinking, who's the idiot? who started it and why are they fighting?
Mhm.
He goes, don't put yourself in that environment. Don't be the idiot, Ron. Disengage, calm.
Awesome. And that story rings so true to a lot of scenarios. I hear those stories with regards to sports athletes, where, hey, can you imagine if you're complaining and yelling at the refs and all that kind of stuff? What are the kids thinking when they see you on TV? Be that leader, be that captain who's able to lead, kind of thing. So I really really love that story. Now, when it comes to leadership and management and higher ups. I've had clients who come up to me and go, you know what, that CEO or that boss doesn't even know anything. How did they become the leader? Or how did they get that position? And from my perspective, I'm like, yeah, they may not know everything,
Mhm.
but they're able to lead. They're able to motivate and engage. How much truth do you think is in that statement? And how important is it for the leaders and the bosses to know the ins and outs of what's going on?
I see it and hear it all the time. Especially, I had a situation where early on in my career, I was thrown in as a manager of a union group. So I had direct reports, 46 union personnel. And I had a meeting after work, and the union steward said, Boss man, can you come in after work in the shop? We'd like to talk to you. This is blue collar workers. I mean, they're strong people, very hard workers. And I said, sure. What's going on? So I showed up at the end of the day. It's 3:30. I walked out in the shop and they had circled all these chairs, fold out chairs. And in the very middle of the circle, this circle was 40 feet wide, was a chair. So as I walked in the room, they separated a couple chairs and they said, Boss man, that's your chair out in the middle. So I walked out in the middle of this circle and I said, okay, you all wanted to vent it. What's going on? I'm the new manager. I'm this, I'm that. And the steward stood up and he goes, we have a list of questions prepared for you. And I said, okay. And he said, we believe that the only reason you got this job is because of all of us workers, you're the only one with a college degree. True or not? I said, great question, sir. I am not on the selection committee. You're asking the wrong person. Fact is, I do have a college degree. Well, second question. I applied for this job and I didn't get it. So you're competing against me for this position and you won for now. And I said, okay, what is that? Is that a threat? What does that mean? He goes, you better show yourself and perform. He goes, you better show me that you know what you're doing. I said, okay. So what else you got? And he said, we don't think you're qualified for the job. And I said, really? And I said, how many of you people on your first day had done the task that's required of you today to do? Well, some of them raised their hand. And I said, I guess I won't know everything then because neither did you. But if I got a great community, you're going to teach me. And wouldn't it be advantageous and beneficial to you to teach me to do it the right way so that when I go on a job site and I see you doing it, I understand why you're doing what you're doing. And if something does break, I understand the risk because you have taught me that. Some of that other stuff, though, I promise you I've done and I can do it. But the thing that matters most is the fact that I trust you and that I understand that you need my support to be successful, and I'm here to support you. And at any time you need to come in, then I said, I encourage you to be here. I know that you're a representative of all of these people in the room, and I do respect you. And I'm committed to success because we all have the exact same boss, and that's the neighbor and the taxpayer. And I said, with all due respect, I believe we're wasting their time right now. So I stood up, turned my chair around, and I walked out. And they came to me, and sure enough, within a month, I go to a job site and I had an employee sitting in the shade tree with his hands all cramped up and he couldn't move them. He was so dehydrated. I brought him the water jug. I gave it to him. I went over to his job and I actually finished curing the curb. So I was striking the curb to make sure the water would flow down the curb because I had worked with concrete. I did know what concrete, and I knew there was a set time when it was hard and you can't move it. And so I worked on it and I helped three other people finish this curb in front of this house because it really went across the driveway and it would have blocked those people when they got home from work. And I knew what the citizens would say as we failed. So I got done, got in my truck, left. The next day, I got a grievance filed on me by that same guy who said, you don't know what you're doing. And I had to go into a disciplinary committee. And I went into the disciplinary committee and they said, we're going to have to pay this grievance because you're not allowed to do manual labor. that's a union job and you cross the line. And so I had to sit back and understand that there are rules and that the labor had, even though in my heart I thought I was doing the right thing, in my head I knew what I was doing. I still had to pay a grievance
Oh man.
because, but I earned their respect from that day forward. Nobody said, boss man doesn't know what the heck he's doing.
How long did it take between you getting the job and that intervention?
I'd say I was hired in March, and so May, so 3 months.
2, 3 months, and then from then till to that next incident where you got the respect. How long was that time?
Oh goodness. I would say that was another 2 months.
Oh wow.
So 6 months on the job. Ironic thing is I got promoted internally in the organization to one of the higher jobs. It was probably one of the second or third in the entire organization within the end of the second year. And so they had it going away. Every single union person showed up at my going away and at
Wow.
my promotion, every one of them.
Wow. That is very, very impressive and very, very cool as well. Um, I know you are now working with a lot of like again corporate and private companies and business CEOs and leaders. What exactly is the ideal company business that you work with? Like when they come in and kind of explain their ins and outs, what's the perfect kind of scenario for you?
I think for me, what it really gets me engaged in an organization is one that has the ability to scale and grow, and they have a good, diverse group of either management teams, C-suite, or owners. I don't like working with organizations that may just want to continue doing the same thing. I don't like the 1985 command and control environment where thou shall, you will, or you're fired. So I want to go in and understand that people in that room want to be better. They want to grow. They want to scale. And I think that's what's important is because I want to sit down there and look at the future with them and come up with a journey and say, okay, here's where we're going to go. Because back in my day of my coaching, I like challenges, but I know how people like to win. And I like being there and I like to celebrate with them and see the success. I don't want to have it as a permanent outcome for me. I want to help them and then I want to get out and look from the outside in and just watch them be successful, just like a coach should.
You mentioned you like to look into the future, and right now AI is the biggest thing out there. How do you see AI impacting what you do and changing that industry?
Boy, AI is a great tool. I fully endorse the use of AI. I think AI, because it's like in the old days, I'm an old guy, obviously. It's like going to the library and you got that old, card reader index and you go through it and you're like, okay, let me find all these books that tie to this subject and I got to read through them. And it takes days. Now, if I say, hey, I want to figure out what so and so's done or how they've done something, it takes minutes. And so for me, I'm not going through 5 days of reading, seven different sources. I can knock out 20 or 2,500 sources in an hour or two. And it gives me perspective from all other, people out there who have done it before me. It shortens my learning curve. It helps. Most importantly, it probably prevents some things that I probably wouldn't have thought about or, I didn't see the outcome. Hindsight is AI is a very dangerous tool because people who don't have the right character, the right heart, could utilize it for all the wrong reasons. And so it can make bad people worse, but it can make good people great. And so I like the tool. I just think that people need to understand that this is going to kind of accelerate some of the platforms out there that you may not want to accelerate. And that's access to information that you probably don't want out there. So people need to understand when they get in there and they put data out there, and sometimes it's personal searches, personal information, that's dangerous.
Hmm. Very, very true. Now, you talked about your book a few moments ago. Share with us a little bit more about the two books that you have, and then also, well, why did you decide to write them, and why people should pick them up?
Yeah, I think for me, the first book that I did was Me and My Best Friend. And it really, from 1993 to 2023, my friend and I, we were neighbors. We moved in the exact same day. It's a strange thing in the same neighborhood in brand new houses. And so he was our age or my age, and his wife became my wife's best friend. So the ladies would drag us around, downtown shopping, and they would go to a boutique and we'd go to a bar or whatever and have a drink and watch them shop. And over the years, through the terminal illness, the diagnosis, having children, parenting, he was just an amazing person. He brought me to his church and introduced me. We still go to that church today. And so we always say, log out, and hang out. So get out of work. You got to have a work-life family balance. And most importantly, you got to have fun because he taught me, hey, get off the clock, go outside. Even if we just sit in the lawn chair and have a iced tea or a beer or whatever it is, tell stories, share your experiences. And so he kind of taught me have fun, work-life balance. And then when we started having kids, family's what matters most. And so we put together that book and it's a 30 for 30. So it's kind of a sports analogy, but our 30 best stories over 30 years. And it was all fun. And so that book will actually make you cry because you're laughing so hard. And then the book that I was working on was really about my life from foster care, having an amazing circle of influence with my grandfather. And then later on, just meeting Dr. Covey and working with Dr. Covey. And then meeting just some, amazing people like David Goggins. And when I met David Goggins and he's talking about you overcome and your mindset, Jason Redman, in his stories about being shot 8 times, 6 blood transfusions just to get to the hospital, in a state of coma, but can hear everything but can't speak because he got a bullet through his jaw into his mouth. He hears people saying he's not going to make it. Why are we wasting our time? Let's go work on the other soldiers. And the mindset about I'm right here. I can hear this, but I can't communicate. And so the things that Jason Redman told me about and his real life experiences, David Goggins and his abusive stepfather and his mom saving him and running away in the middle of the night. It's just Dick Hoyt sacrificing everything, his military career to raise Rick. When I met Dick Hoyt, we sat down and we talked about it. Lead a life of service, Ron. What matters most is your family. And it started resonating. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this sounds like my best friend, Chris. And Dick Hoyt goes, Ron, I do everything for Rick. Everything, literally from the moment I get up to the end of the day. Rick said, Dad, I want to give back. But he's in a wheelchair. So, of course, Dick laughs about it. He signed him up for a 5K. So he's going, I got to do all the work. So he's pushing Rick in a wheelchair through a 5K. And then he told me that elevated because Rick was the happiest he'd ever been. He felt like he was the one running. He was the heart and Dick was the legs and the lungs. They got through it. Next thing you know, Rick challenged his dad. It's not enough. Let's go. So ABC or CBS said, let's do a documentary. They followed him from one side of the world to the other. He went across the
Wow.
United States. He competed in numerous triathlons. He went down and ran the Boston Marathon. All of that pushing Rick in a wheelchair.
Wow.
He told me the story. He was out off the coast of Hawaii in an Ironman, and he was doing the swim portion, and he's miles offshore, and he's swimming, the only one swimming, pulling a dinghy. So he's pulling a dinghy with Rick floating in it. He got out. The waves, the surf's 4, 6 feet, flips the dinghy over. Rick's out. So Dick's like scared to death. He finally gets Rick back in. Rick, quadriplegic, he can't really help much. So he got in the dinghy. And Rick is sitting there looking at his dad and he's laughing. He almost died and he was laughing. So surround yourself with people like that. That's what I call my circle of influence. And they'll inspire you. If you get satisfied, and they'll humble you. They'll
Mhm.
humble you and they'll
Yeah.
tell you, you are not done. You can do more. So that's kind of, that's who drives me.
Mhm. That's very, very cool. One of my favorite, I think, mini stories from David Goggins, or it was a conversation between him and somebody else. And the person's like, hey, I hear you're going to this place where there's like a bear alert or something like that. And Goggins' reply was, if I'm going there, the bear should be afraid of me. So,
Yeah.
talk
He
about mindset.
he does have a tough mentality like that because like he says, he overcame so much
Yep.
on just the daily beatings. And when dad would, take on the alcohol, his mindset would change and he became more abusive. That's my mind. That's where I came from. And I'm like, I understand. You know what my wife always said, why didn't the school ever figure it out and find out? It's because I was in athletics. And they didn't question why I was bruised all the time because I played football
Right.
or, any contact sport. I was constantly being beat up. And I don't know. It's a different mindset. But David, I enjoyed meeting him and talking with him. And there's just so many of those great people out there that I draw the passion from.
Hmm. There's a saying that leaders are born. How much truth is in that? And if there's no truth in that, and people can actually grow to become leaders, what's the very first step for people who wants to become leaders to learn to be a leader?
I think it is. I think, for some reason, I don't want to get too deep and spiritual, but I think God gives you tools and it's up to you to deploy them. It's up to you to overcome outside influences because they're all around you. It's up to you to stay humble, be kind to others. It's up to you to have a servant mentality. One of the things I learned a long time ago when I met Lamar Hunt. Lamar Hunt is the reason there's an NFL the way it is today. You know that they have trophies named after him, championships. But when I met Lamar Hunt, I was talking to him about doing a volunteer program and helping raise some awareness and monies for a youth soccer league. And when I met him, here's one of the most influential guys in the world said the AFL and the NFL should play together, or the NFC and AFC. We should do this one league. And no, everybody thought he was crazy. And he showed up with a servant mentality and said, I think it's a great idea. I'm very humble to ask, how should we do this? Let's all make it our shared experience and idea. And so I think that's a leader. A leader is somebody who can humble themselves and draw people in where it's contagious and they want to come in and want to be part of a better organization in a group. And you can sit back. The coaching, the national championships, I hear from some of my players today that are just, I heard from one the other day, he's chasing human trafficking around the world and he's busted some of the largest human trafficking rings in the world. And he was, of all things, he was a goalie, but he was a tough and he was a protector. And he had that mindset. And I think he was built that way. I think he was born that way to protect people. And so having him, one of the things I learned from him was as I started training and coaching, I was like, I just need to step back. These people and their mentors and their peers to all of the kids on the team and their teammates, and they had more positive outcomes than I could have ever done that as a coach speaking down to them at my age, even though I had the experience. I learned a lot by just saying, okay, here, let's let these people police themselves to a certain degree, but encourage each other and work for each other. If you go to a whiteboard, this is an interesting thing. And I learned this. If you put one plus one, Dr. Covey always said one plus one equals infinite response, right? He never said two. And one of the things he would always say is one plus one equals four, five, could be anything. So I would go to a whiteboard and I would say one plus one plus one. Well, if I'm doing a sport that's five on a court or 11 on a field, whatever that number is, one plus one, and we all just put our ones. One plus one equals what? And at the bottom, we put success. And then we said, okay, what is the definition of success? Everybody had their opinion. People said they want to be good people. People said they want to influence others. People said they want to win a championship. People said they want to go to college. People said I want to play professionally. Great. One plus one could be anything. Well, you're that one. But did you notice what's common out there other than ones is the pluses? There's no negatives. So you want to be positive and you want to add to and support the person next to you on both sides, and you'll have a successful outcome. That team ended up winning three national championships. Half the team played professionally. And our very last experience, my last experience was in Real Madrid, Spain at their youth academy with 16, 17, and 18-year-olds. I brought American players over there to share that experience on an international basis. But that team was successful and they won championships because that one plus one. And as soon as they realized that they weren't playing for themselves, they were playing for somebody next to them, they were trying harder because they didn't want that person to fail. And the captains dictated practice. They did duration of practice, frequency of activities. If they noticed something wasn't quite right, we stayed on it. And when they started winning championships, they wanted more championships. And then it just grew. The culture was amazing.
Oh, it's magical when you get a group like that together and they're all on the same page. And I think it was Tom Brady who says the next one, the next one, the next championship is the best one. So
Yep.
congratulations on all that success and all those all that experience as well. I think that is a great part to kind of end off the formal portion of this interview. I think what you said there are is great words to live by, and people should remember that it's not just the ones, but the pluses. But before I let you go, I got five quick rapid fire questions for you. Please give me the first thing that comes to mind. All right,
Yes.
you're stranded on a deserted island, one food to eat for the rest of your life, no consequence.
You cut out. Sorry. What'd you say?
One food to eat for the rest of your life, no consequence. You'll still be healthy.
Strawberry.
What do you do for fun? You mentioned fun a lot, so what's your definition of fun?
I bike 100 miles a week, typically on the beach, and I chase dolphins.
Oh wow. Hollywood calls and goes, "Hey Ron, we love your story. We would love to do a biopic of you. Who would you cast to play you?"
Hmm. David Goggins.
You're in a car for a long, long road trip, and you're listening to one song on repeat. What's that song?
Humble and Kind by Tim McGraw.
Nice choice. Number from one to five.
3.
One, two, three. So the word is Halloween, and if you had to use the word Halloween as a metaphor for success, how is success like Halloween?
A metaphor for Halloween. So I'm trying to think for success is be there and give treats to others. Make their day.
Nicely done. Thank you very much. So that's how success is like Halloween. Once again, thank you very much for all the stories that you shared, your wisdom and your experience with leadership and business and coaching. Any final words from you, and what's the best way for people to reach out?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to share, and I learned so much from these dialogues, and I appreciate the questions. RC Development, it's abbreviated, so rcdevsolutions.com.
Great. Awesome. So for everybody out there, if you're looking for uh, work with your company, growth in your business, leadership strategies and solutions, reach out to Ron. Obviously, he has his books out as well, so pick up those as well. And I hear there's a lot of great stories in there for everybody to learn from and also laugh from. So once again, thank you very much, Ron. He's Ron. I'm Fong. Until next time, today is the day to lock your peak potential. We'll see you later.